The pitch deck was on my screen for 11 seconds before I recognized it. Not because it was identical to mine. It was not identical. The colors were different, and the font was different, and the company name was different, and the founder's photograph in the upper right corner was a woman I had known for 4 years, standing in front of a white backdrop, wearing a blazer I had seen her buy at a sample sale in Brooklyn 2 years earlier. But the core concept was mine. The mechanism was mine. The specific problem it solved, the specific way it proposed to solve it, and the specific market it was targeting were mine in the way that ideas are yours when you have spent 18 months developing them from an observation into a framework, into a product concept, into a document you shared with exactly one person because you trusted her. I was sitting at my desk in my apartment in Boston, Massachusetts, on a Thursday afternoon in April, looking at a TechCrunch article about a promising new startup in the accessibility technology space, founded by a woman named Kelsey Marsh, who had apparently been working on this concept for 2 years. Kelsey Marsh had been my college roommate. She had been my friend for 4 years after college. She had been the one person I had shared the full concept with 14 months earlier over dinner at a restaurant in Manhattan, where we met twice a year to catch up on each other's lives. Because that was what we had always done, and because I trusted her the way you trust people you have known since you were 18 and who have been consistently present through everything that followed. I sat at my desk for a long moment. Then I opened a different folder on my computer. The one that contained the provisional patent application I had filed with the United States Patent and Trademark Office 14 months earlier. The one dated 3 weeks before the dinner when I had told Kelsey everything. I read the filing date. Then I read the TechCrunch article again more carefully. Then I called my patent attorney. My name is Amara Osei, and I am 29 years old. I am the daughter of 2 engineers, which means I grew up in a household where ideas were taken seriously, and documentation was considered a basic form of respect for ideas. My father came from Ghana to study electrical engineering at MIT in 1987, and never left because Boston suited him, and because the work he found there suited him more, and because he met my mother in his second year. And she was a mechanical engineer from Maryland who had also never intended to stay, and they had built a life together in the particular determined way of 2 people who had found each other in a place they both considered temporary and gradually understood was permanent. I grew up watching my parents document everything: lab notebooks, project files, dated entries. The particular discipline of people who understood that ideas have no protection without records, and that records made after the fact are worth considerably less than records made in the moment. My mother used to say that an undocumented idea is a gift to whoever gets there second. I became an engineer because of them, and because the specific pleasure of solving problems that have concrete, measurable solutions suited my brain in a way that few other things did. I had worked for 3 years after college at a medical device company in Boston, developing assistive technology products for people with mobility limitations, before leaving to pursue a graduate degree in biomedical engineering at Northeastern. The idea came in my second year of graduate school, not suddenly. Not in the particular flash of inspiration that stories about invention tend to favor. Gradually, through a series of observations about gaps in existing assistive technology for people with limited hand dexterity, and the specific frustration of watching users in the studies I was running struggle with interfaces that had been designed without adequate consideration of their actual physical experience. The gap was real. The need was documented in the research literature. The existing solutions were insufficient in specific ways I could describe precisely, and the solution I was developing addressed those insufficiencies in a specific way I could demonstrate. By the end of my second year, I had a working prototype. By the time I filed the provisional patent application, I had a concept that my faculty advisor described as the most practically significant student project she had supervised in 15 years. I filed the provisional application in December. Provisionals give you 12 months of patent pending status and establish your priority date. My patent attorney, a precise, methodical man named James Okafor, who had no relation to the Mrs. Okafor in Cincinnati, but who had the same steady quality of someone whose thoroughness you trusted immediately, had recommended the provisional as the right first step. I filed it on a Tuesday. 3 weeks later, I had dinner with Kelsey. Kelsey Marsh and I had met during orientation week at our university in New York City, when we were assigned to the same residence hall room and had discovered within 48 hours that we were compatible in the specific way that makes shared living not just tolerable but genuinely good. She was studying business. I was studying engineering. We were different in the ways that made friendship interesting rather than difficult. She was social and strategic and had the particular ease in professional environments that some people develop early, and that I had always found slightly mysterious since it operated through instincts I did not naturally possess. We had stayed close after graduation. Annual visits, regular calls, the ongoing thread of a friendship that had survived the particular dispersal of adult life across geography and careers, and the different rhythms of different cities. I trusted her, not naively. The way you trust people you have known long enough to have evidence for the trust. At the dinner in January, I had told her about the project. Not casually. Deliberately. I had been thinking about who to bring into my thinking as I moved toward commercialization, and Kelsey had built a career in startup consulting and had the specific knowledge of venture capital and product launch that I lacked. I told her the full concept, the problem, the mechanism, the prototype results, the market opportunity, the commercialization pathway I was considering. She asked good questions. Smart ones. The kind that improved my thinking rather than simply reflecting it back. She said it was brilliant. She said I should move quickly because the market timing was right. She said she would think about who she knew who might be useful to connect me with. I drove home from that dinner feeling the particular energized clarity of someone who has shared an important idea with someone they trust and been confirmed in its significance. 3 months later, I started the formal patent application process with James Okafor. 6 months after that, I was heads down in a grant application for development funding and had not yet taken the commercialization steps I had been planning. 14 months after the dinner, I was sitting at my desk looking at a TechCrunch article. James Okafor answered my call on the second ring. I told him what I was looking at. He asked me to send him the article and the link to Kelsey's company's website. I sent both. He was quiet for 4 minutes while he read. Then he said, "Send me the provisional filing and the formal application we submitted in March." I sent them. He was quiet for another 6 minutes. Then he said, "Amara, your priority date is December of last year." The formal application was filed in March. Both predate this company's incorporation date, which, according to their website, is February of this year. I sat very still. "The core mechanism described in their product overview," James continued, "is covered by your claims as filed." "Is that definitive?" I asked. "It requires analysis," he said. "But preliminary review suggests significant overlap with your protected claims." A pause. "I want you to send me everything you have from your communications with Kelsey Marsh. Emails. Text messages. Any written record of what you shared with her and when." I pulled up the email I had sent Kelsey 2 days after the dinner. A summary of the concept as we had discussed it that I had sent to confirm we were aligned on what I had shared. Her response confirmed receipt and said it was exciting and she was thinking about contacts. I forwarded both to James. He read them. "Good," he said. "This is very good." "What does that mean?" "It means you documented what you shared and with whom and when," he said, "which establishes the context of disclosure and the relationship within which it occurred." I thought about my mother's voice. An undocumented idea is a gift to whoever gets there second. I had documented everything. "What are my options?" I asked. James told me. "I want to be careful about how I tell the next part of the story because it involves legal processes that were specific to my situation, and that should not be taken as general legal advice for anyone reading this in a similar situation. Every patent dispute is different. Every set of facts is different." I had James Okafor working methodically through mine, and the outcome I experienced was the result of those specific facts. "What I will tell you is the shape of what happened." James sent a letter. Not an aggressive letter. A precise one. It identified the patent filing. It identified the priority date. It identified the specific claims that appeared to overlap with the product described in the TechCrunch article. It requested that Kelsey's company and its legal representation make contact to discuss the situation. The letter went out on a Friday. On Sunday evening, Kelsey called me. I had not called her. I had deliberately not contacted her directly because James had advised me not to and because I had understood immediately that the relationship between what I needed legally and what I wanted emotionally was two different things and that conflating them would serve neither. She called me. I answered. Her voice was the voice of someone who had spent a weekend in a state of significant internal turbulence and had arrived at Sunday evening in a place of partial resolution that was not yet complete. "Amara," she said. "Kelsey." A long pause. "I saw the letter," she said. "I know," I said. "I need to explain something." I waited. "When you told me about the concept," she said, "I got excited. I started thinking about it. I started working on it. I told myself I was developing it differently enough that it was my own version." I listened. "I knew it came from our conversation," she said. "I told myself it was inspiration, not taking. Those are different things." I said, "I know."
Her voice was quiet. I know that now. Another pause. The patent exists, I said. The priority date is December. Your company was incorporated in February. I know, she said. My attorney will be handling the legal aspects, I said. I wanted to tell you that directly rather than having it be only through lawyers. Kelsey was quiet for a long moment. Are we done? She said. As friends. That was the question I had been sitting with since Thursday afternoon. I had spent 3 days thinking about Kelsey, about 4 years of college and 4 years after, about the dinner in January and the questions she had asked, and whether those questions had been a genuine interest or something else. I had concluded that I did not know, and that not knowing was honest in a way that a definitive answer in either direction would not have been. I don't know yet. I said, I need to get through the legal part first. She said she understood. We hung up. I sat in my apartment in Boston and thought about the provisional patent application I had filed on a Tuesday in December, because James Okafor had said that establishing the priority date early was the most important single step in protecting an idea. He had been right. The legal process took 4 months. I will not describe every step, because the specific steps are specific to intellectual property law and patent disputes, and because what matters for the story is not the legal mechanism, but the human experience of moving through it. What I will say is that Kelsey's company did not contest the overlap. Their attorney reviewed the filings and concluded what James had concluded on the day of my call. The priority date was clear. The claims were documented. The email exchange established the context and timing of disclosure. Kelsey's company had two options: litigation or licensing. They chose licensing. The licensing agreement that James negotiated on my behalf was structured to provide me with a percentage of revenue from the product's commercial sales in exchange for the right to continue using the protected mechanism. It was not a punitive agreement. It was an accurate one that reflected the actual relationship between the idea and its origination. I read it carefully. I signed it. James shook my hand in his office on a Wednesday afternoon in August and said he had been practicing patent law for 22 years, and that the combination of a timely provisional filing and a contemporaneous documentation of disclosure was as clean a set of facts as he had worked with in a situation like this. I told him my mother had taught me that undocumented ideas were gifts to whoever got there second. He said he was going to use that line with clients. I called my mother that evening. She answered on the first ring because she had known the legal process was concluding and had been waiting. I told her the outcome. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, the provisional. The provisional. I confirmed. December. December. She made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sigh, and that contained everything she felt about having raised a daughter who filed the paperwork when the paperwork needed filing. Your father is going to be insufferable about this, she said. I laughed. She was correct. My father called an hour later and was insufferable about it in the particular warm way of a man who is proud of a decision his daughter made and is expressing that pride through the language of engineering, which is precision and process and the satisfaction of a system that worked as designed. He said, You established the priority date. I did, I said, before the disclosure. 3 weeks before. He was quiet for a moment in the way my father was quiet when something had gone correctly and he was fully appreciating it. Then he said, Good. One word. From my father, that word contained everything. I finished my graduate degree in May. The licensing income began arriving in September when Kelsey's company launched the product commercially. It was not life-changing money in the first year. It was significant money, and it was growing as the product gained market traction, and it was mine in a way that felt clean rather than contested. I used the first year's income to fund a second patent application for an improvement to the original mechanism that I had developed during the months of the legal process, because the legal process had given me concentrated time to think about the technology and concentrated time with nothing to do, but think had produced the next idea. James filed that application in October. I moved to Seattle in November to join the assistive technology division of a company whose work I respected and whose resources would allow me to develop the technology further than I could develop it alone. The licensing agreement traveled with me. The patents traveled with me. The documentation system my parents had taught me traveled with me. I have lab notebooks for every project, dated entries, witnessed when possible, backed up in 2 locations. The particular discipline of someone who understands that ideas without records are vulnerable, regardless of how original they are or how much work went into them. Kelsey and I have not spoken since the legal process concluded. Not because of a formal decision. Because the friendship required a foundation of trust that the situation revealed had been more conditional on her side than I had understood it to be. And because rebuilding that kind of trust requires a set of conversations that neither of us has initiated. That may change. It may not. I hold both possibilities without urgency because I have learned that some things resolve in their own time and that forcing resolution before it is ready produces something that resembles resolution without being it. What I know is that the idea was protected because of a decision made on a Tuesday in December that took 45 minutes and cost the fee for a provisional patent application. 45 minutes, and the idea was protected. That ratio still strikes me as remarkable. There is something I want to say about the patent specifically and about documentation, generally for anyone who creates things for a living, or who has an idea they are developing, or who is in the early stages of something they believe in. The provisional patent application exists specifically to allow inventors to establish a priority date before they are ready to file a full application. It is a placeholder. It says this idea existed, and it was mine on this date, and here is what it was. The formal application can follow within 12 months. The provisional costs a fraction of the formal application. It is accessible to individual inventors. It is the specific mechanism designed for exactly the situation I was in. File it early. Before you share the idea with anyone. Before the pitch. Before the dinner. Before the conversation with the person you trust completely, whose trustworthiness you have not yet had occasion to test in this specific way. File the provisional. Establish the date. Then share. That sequence does not mean you distrust the people you share with. It means you respect the idea enough to protect it before you extend the protection of your trust to another person. Those are two separate things. I trusted Kelsey. She made a decision with what I shared that I would not have made. But the idea was protected because the protection came before the sharing. That sequence was everything. My mother taught me that undocumented ideas are gifts to whoever gets there second. I filed the documentation. The idea stayed mine. And the second person, even with a significant head start, could not claim it as her own because I had established on a Tuesday in December that it was mine first. If you are building something, document it. Date it. File it. Back it up. Keep the records. Not because you distrust the people around you. Because the idea deserves the respect of being protected before it needs protection. You cannot go back and file the provisional the day after the dinner. You can only file it before. File it before. Thank you for being here today. If this story meant something to you, please share it with someone who might need it.